In the small, quiet town of Willowbrook, where the days were calm and the nights eerily silent, there was a house no one dared to enter. The locals called it the Ashwood Manor, a grand, decaying estate perched on the edge of a dense forest. The manor had been abandoned for decades, yet its windows often glowed with a faint light after midnight. Those who ventured too close reported hearing whispers, their names softly called by an unseen presence. Alice, a curious teenager new to the town, dismissed the rumors as mere superstition. Determined to uncover the truth, she convinced her friends to join her in exploring the old mansion. Armed with flashlights and a video camera, they arrived at Ashwood Manor just as the moon began to rise. The door creaked open as if it had been waiting for them. Inside, the air was thick with dust, and the smell of decay lingered. The walls were lined with portraits of a family, their eyes seeming to follow the group as they moved through the rooms. As they reached the grand staircase, Alice felt a sudden chill, and the temperature dropped sharply. "Do you feel that?" she whispered, her breath visible in the cold air. The others nodded, their faces pale with fear. They heard a soft sobbing coming from upstairs. Alice, her heart pounding, led the way up the stairs, each step echoing ominously through the empty house. At the top, they found a long hallway, the sobbing growing louder. The sound led them to a locked door at the end of the corridor. With trembling hands, Alice turned the handle. The door swung open, revealing a small, dimly lit room. In the center stood a woman in a tattered white dress, her back turned to them. Her hair hung in tangled locks, and she continued to sob softly. "Are you okay?" Alice stammered, stepping closer. The woman froze, and the sobbing ceased. Slowly, she turned to face them. Her eyes were hollow, black pits, her mouth twisted into a grotesque smile. The room filled with an overwhelming sense of dread as she began to speak, her voice a distorted whisper. "Why have you come?" The friends were rooted to the spot, unable to move as the ghostly figure advanced toward them. The air grew colder, and the lights in the room flickered before going out completely, plunging them into darkness. The last thing Alice saw was the woman's twisted grin as she whispered, "Now, you can never leave." The door slammed shut behind them, sealing their fate. The next morning, the townspeople noticed that the light in Ashwood Manor had returned, but no one dared to investigate. Alice and her friends were never seen again, their disappearance becoming yet another ghost story told to scare the children of Willowbrook. And every night, after the town was asleep, the faint sounds of sobbing could be heard coming from the manor, as new whispers joined the old, forever trapped within the walls of Ashwood Manor. Days turned into weeks, and the search for Alice and her friends grew cold. The townspeople whispered about the curse of Ashwood Manor, and no one dared to venture near it, fearing they too would be swallowed by the darkness within. But not everyone was content to let the mystery go unsolved. Alice's younger brother, Michael, refused to believe his sister was gone. He had always looked up to her, admired her bravery, and he couldn't accept that she had simply vanished. Determined to find her, he began researching the history of Ashwood Manor, hoping to uncover a way to save her. Michael discovered that the house had once belonged to a wealthy family, the Ashwoods, who were plagued by tragedy. The matriarch, Eliza Ashwood, had gone mad after the mysterious death of her daughter, Lillian. She became obsessed with contacting her daughter's spirit, dabbling in dark rituals and Sanchez. But something had gone terribly wrong. Instead of reaching her daughter, Eliza had summoned something else, something that drove her to madness and ultimately to her death. It was said that Eliza's spirit never left the house, bound by the dark forces she had unleashed. The rumors of sobbing and whispers were believed to be the echoes of her torment, and those who entered the house were at risk of falling under her curse, becoming part of the restless souls trapped within. Armed with this knowledge, Michael knew he couldn't face the entity alone. He sought out help from an unlikely source, an old woman named Agnes who lived on the outskirts of town. Agnes was a recluse, known for her knowledge of the occult and the supernatural. She had warned people for years to stay away from Ashwood Manor, but no one had listened. When Michael arrived at her doorstep, Agnes seemed to be expecting him. "You're the boy who wants to save his sister," she said, her voice raspy with age. "I've seen it in my dreams." Michael nodded, explaining what he had learned about Eliza Ashwood and begging Agnes to help him break the curse. Agnes sighed deeply. Breaking such a curse is no easy task, and it comes at a great cost. Are you prepared to do whatever it takes? I am, Michael replied without hesitation. Agnes led Michael into her home, where she showed him an ancient, leather-bound book filled with arcane symbols and rituals. There is a way, she said, but it requires a sacrificial life for a life. You must find an object that belonged to Eliza and perform the ritual in the very room where she summoned the darkness. Only then can you hope to free your sister and the others. With the book in hand and a heavy heart, Michael prepared to enter Ashwood Manor, knowing that his journey could end in tragedy. He ventured to the local cemetery, where he found the Ashwood family plot. After searching through the overgrown graves, he discovered a locket buried with Eliza Locket, said to contain a strand of Lillian's hair, the last connection Eliza had to her daughter. That night, as the moon hung low in the sky, Michael made his way to the manor. The house loomed before him, its dark windows like empty eyes watching his every move. Taking a deep breath, he stepped inside, clutching the locket and the ritual book tightly. The air inside was thick with the same oppressive cold Alice had felt. The whispers began almost immediately, but Michael pressed on, determined not to be swayed by fear. He followed the path his sister had taken, up the grand staircase and down the hallway to the locked door. When he reached the door, it swung open as if welcoming him. Inside, the room was exactly as Alice had described it, dimly lit, with the same woman in a white dress standing in the center, her back to him. But Michael knew better than to approach her. Instead, he quickly set up the ritual, drawing a circle of protection around himself and placing the locket in the center. As he began to chant the incantation from Agnes' book, the room grew colder, and the ghostly figure turned to face him, her hollow eyes narrowing. "Leave this place," she hissed, her voice filled with malice. Michael continued the chant, his voice growing louder as the air around him crackled with energy. The ghost lunged at him, but she was stopped by the barrier of the circle. She screamed, a sound that echoed through the house, shaking the very walls. Suddenly, the room was filled with the voices of the trapped souls, crying out for release. Michael's heart raced as he saw the faces of Alice and her friends appear in the swirling darkness. They looked terrified, desperate to be freed. With one final, powerful word, Michael completed the ritual. The locket in the center of the circle began to glow, and a blinding light filled the room. The ghost of Eliza Ashwood shrieked in agony as she was pulled toward the light, her form disintegrating into nothingness. The cries of the trapped souls grew louder, then faded away as the light consumed them. When the light finally dimmed, Michael found himself alone in the now silent room. The oppressive cold was gone, replaced by a sense of peace. He felt a hand on his shoulder and turned to see Alice standing beside him, her face filled with gratitude. "You did it," she whispered, tears of relief in her eyes. Michael nodded, too overwhelmed to speak. The other friends appeared behind Alice, looking equally relieved. Together, they made their way out of Ashwood Manor, the curse finally broken. As they stepped into the cool night air, the first rays of dawn began to break over the horizon. Michael knew they would never forget what had happened, but they were free to live their lives, away from the shadow of the ghost that had haunted the town for so long. And Ashwood Manor? It remained abandoned, its dark history slowly fading into legend, a place where no one would ever dare to go again.